Good evening and welcome to All for United WFC with me, Matt Crane. I'm delighted to be joined tonight by John and by Anthony. Anthony, how are we doing?
Yeah, I'm really well, thank you.
Good. And yeah, not bad, thanks. How are you, John?
Yeah, good, thank you, mate. Yourself?
Yeah, not too bad. It's been enjoying the sunshine today in parts. So yeah, all good. Tonight's topic, social media. Looking at pros and cons, we'll discuss sort of, the various topics that have been not only just in football, but sort of in the news in general these last few months. And just give views on that really. Good evening to all those as well currently tuned in. It's nice to see so many familiar faces back. Right, so we'll get straight into it then. Social media, there's a lot said about it, both good and bad. There's a lot, like I say, in recent weeks sort of been in the news about it, whether it's been sort of racism, whether it's been bullying, whether it's been mental health, whether it's been harassment. And I think obviously in a footballing context, it's something that I'm sure a lot of people feel strongly on, ourselves included. I know we've had sort of brief conversations, the three of us, prior to this show and sort of surrounding the planning regarding social media. So I think what we'll do tonight is I'll kind of split it up into like pros and cons, and then any views or any topics that the pair of you want to talk about, we'll add in there. I think what we'll do is we'll talk about it in a football context, and we'll talk about sort of the pros of it first. So if I kick off and I'll sort of think, in terms of linking to United, I think pros of social media are, it's good for fans catching up. And I'm going to sort of cast everybody's mind back to 2018, 18-19 season. Barmy Army only formed in the December. I say only formed. We only went on social media December 2018, and there was a lack of coverage for the women's game, especially in the Championship. Now the Championship obviously isn't as big as the WSL, so a lot of people had to go to Barmy Army, and we put out live updates on our Twitter. And then I think it was about March 2019, we put out an Instagram page, and again that was sort of to link fans, because at the time the club did nothing. They literally they would post at full time. They post the result and they'd tell you who played and who scored, and you got a little match report, and that was it. So I'll come to you first, John. Obviously, the sort of pros of that, whether that's fans, fan channels, individuals as well. Because I know I think yourself, you mentioned in the past, haven't you, about you'd had to go to sort of Natalie's Twitter feed, and other people have said the same. Whether it's been whether it's been Nat, whether it's been Ben. So do you just want to talk about sort of the pros of that in terms of access for information about games?
It means the world, because sometimes we don't do ourselves justice, because we know a lot, because we kind of live and breathe it day in, day out. That's how passionate we are. But there's a lot of fans out there that don't live and breathe it, but they still want to find out information. For example, on game day, if they want to know how the match is going, and they haven't, and especially back in that season when there was no FA player, surely you'd like to know how Manchester United are doing during their game. Obviously, what the Barmy Army did in that first season was something that nobody else did for Man United. So, yeah, that's obviously huge. As for bringing fans together, look, I joined Twitter in, I think it was May 2019, purely to get information on the women's team, because I just knew that there was nothing else out there. So for me, I joined social media to get information. So as soon as you type in MU women, or you start following some players' names, back in them days, there was only a few names that actually came up. Matt, you conversed a little bit, and obviously Natalie conversed on everything going, and there was a few others as well. And then obviously you can go further on down the line, so you see Anthony's name, and back then Rodney, Andy, and Matt Johnson, all these fans, and that's how you get to start to build that little family and get information and get educated, really. So I think for fans, especially in the early stages, what the Barmy Army did was so important.
Yeah, Anthony, just sort of to add to that, then obviously maybe your thoughts or your background. How did it sort of start for you? Then was it something that you came across us as individuals, maybe Barmy Army as a group on social media, or is it sort of maybe just you came up to us at games? How did sort of your journey start then in terms of becoming a part of us?
Yeah, my first game was at the Dripping Pan, Lewis. The pitch wasn't in great condition, and some people tell me if it wasn't Man United, the game would have been off. So luckily for you, being that far, it was good. It was 2-0. And my mate Stacey, he went to Palace the week before or 2 weeks before, and he was like, "Oh, we were driving up, and he was like, oh, they're crazy, they are. They're nuts." And I was like, "Oh, that's good." So then, in that game, we sort of did our own thing, watched from a distance. And it wasn't until I think Brighton in the FA Cup, and I thought, I'm having a bit of that. Stacey was with someone, and he went and sat down because he liked sitting down on the halfway line, whereas I was like, oh, I want to get him a bit of action. So that's when it fully took off for me, and I try and make as many games as I can. Obviously, it all depends on times and that, but no, that's how it started for me. There was nothing on Twitter, like you said. If you had started the Twitter thing out at the start, and it would have been retweeted, and might have got retweeted by the men's Facebook fan accounts, then I might have seen it a bit more. And I thought, oh yeah, because like you all, I'm Man United born and bred, followed the United men from a young age. So yeah, no, that's how I found out, and so it's a great pro. The advertisement of it, it's not just that; it's the cheapness of it. It's for the family as well. Yeah, you do get your hardcore fans and that, but then you get families that can go there like football, but maybe can't afford the 120 cost for a family. Yeah, you can go for a tenner, and you get to watch a bit of football, and everyone's a winner.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we'll go on to the advertising side and things like that, like you're saying, touching about families. But I want to come back to something you mentioned, John, about sort of you interacted with people and you got to know people. And something I'd said after season 1 was it feels like a family. Like it sounds bizarre to sort of, people that have maybe never come to a game or never been to a few games or, sat with us or interacted. But I think there's so many sort of people out there in season 1, and it's grown massively due to social media. And I know, certainly myself, and I know Nat said it before, we've had people coming up to us and say, oh, I've seen you on Twitter, or I've seen you on, Instagram, or I've seen you on YouTube, for example. And I think it's great, isn't it, like that? Because sometimes, and I know something, obviously Gareth can't be with us tonight, but something he touched on was he used to obviously go to games on his own, and then he interacted with us, and, we sort of, now, like I say, he's with us every week in terms of, well, obviously when we're in games, he's with us every week. But, things like that are kind of massively undervalued, aren't they? Because I suppose as well, if we sort of link into, mental health and things like that, and sometimes it's just great. I know I've talked about this a lot. At the end of the week, you've got a game to look forward to. Now, obviously, it's a little bit difficult at the moment, but things like that, again, social media can, play a massive part in terms of sort of bringing everybody together. And I'm hoping, obviously, when we get back that, it's going to take off even more, because I think the amount of people I've spoke to since last March that I never, kind of knew has grown massively. So do you want to talk about that and sort of add to it? Because I know this is one of your sort of ways you came in.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously I didn't know anyone at all. I never followed women's football. I support Man United, obviously, but living in Birmingham area, a few of my mates who did support them. Hello, Vix. Good to see you again. Thank you. The fans the friends that I did know who support United didn't really go to many matches, and they certainly didn't support the women's team. So I was basically by myself. So here I am watching half an hour highlights on MUTV, trying to get a bit of information, and I was pretty much by myself. And obviously, I missed that first season, but I was soon hooked in, and I bought a season ticket for the second season. But in between that, this is where obviously I met you guys on Twitter, and I felt comfortable. Obviously, going up to you once I'd seen your name on Twitter and stuff. But you mentioned something about earlier, Matt, about someone coming up to you saying, "Oh, I recognise you on wherever." I had exactly the same. So a couple of scenarios. So my very first game at the Etihad, first game of the second season, Rodney came up to me, Rodney Cyrus, and he says, "Oh, John, I recognise you from YouTube," because at the time I was just doing a few little videos myself. And obviously, I recognise Rodney because he obviously got a big channel. So obviously, we recognised each other. We had that bond there, and And then my first home game, I recognised Matt Johnson because of his YouTube channel as well. So you just when you're on YouTube, you do feel that you know the person before you actually know them, if you know what I mean. So for me personally, who's fairly quiet in person, for me to build relationships, especially over the last 18 months or so with you guys as well, it's these are definitely the pros, aren't they? I can't remember what else you mentioned there, Matt, but there's a couple of little nice stories why social media for me is so nice and pleasing and positive.
Yeah, sort of the other bits I was kind of touching on, and I don't know if Anthony wants to maybe jump in. Sort of saying like, it's good that at the end of a working week that you can kind of, look forward to a game. I know obviously, like I say, now we can't get in. There's a lot. I mean, Birmingham do watch-alongs, for example. But I'm sort of discussing, about it's great to sort of even socially, because I know obviously Anthony, we've sort of, we all obviously you weren't there, but we went to Norway. And sort of made a holiday out of it. And obviously there's been people I know, you talked about yourself and Stacey, and kind of you've met up with other people. And it's great because everybody's friends outside football as well, aren't they? Which is sort of something that maybe people don't always understand. They maybe just think it's limited to football.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, it's not just going to the football and that. It's the social aspect of it as well. When they won the league, we all joined a night in Manchester, didn't we? Was it me, you, Matt?
Yeah.
So
Matt, Ben, Stacey.
I know people always joke about with me, and that's just, I'm used to that. That's just the way it is. I'm one of them people.
Yeah.
That I can take it. I know people are joking in that, and I'm not a serious person. Like I don't take things. Otherwise, I think if you take yourself too serious, you just stress yourself out. It's like you just banter it and then give it back, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think, like I say, that's the sort of the great thing is that, like, we do socialise outside of football. Like you touched on there, and I know, we've obviously, because we all live different areas, the three of us. It's been nice to just kind of mix with local fans as well. And again, we're all there for the same reasons. Sort of moving on then, obviously we talked about sort of the social aspect of social media, funnily enough, no pun intended. But I think another thing what I like as well is obviously because there's the players on there as well. It's great for fans, isn't it? So it's not only just to keep up to date with like, the matches and the results and sort of new signings, new contracts, but it's also good that a lot of our players are very, very good in terms of liking things, in terms of replying to fans. I've seen the odd videos. John, do you just want to talk and sort of discuss maybe what you might have seen, or what maybe you might have a standout moment that you've liked and you've seen from a player and thought, wow, fantastic?
Yeah, I mean, I'm grateful. I'm on Twitter a lot, aren't I? I'm probably, I think underneath Natalie, I'm probably on Twitter quite a bit, especially on my days off. I've always got my phone in my hand or something, and so I'm very grateful. I think there's been a few occasions where Jess Sigsworth has commented on my. I think I put a little video up of me singing a Jess Sigsworth song when I bought a new shirt with her name on the back. Kirsty Hansen's brilliant at it. She's always liking poster statuses. I think Mary Earps is another one. Jackie Groden's liked some of my statuses, and obviously it's just nice to know that they're actually taking the time to read, and there's a bigger picture here, isn't there? It shows that they really respect the fans, and it's two-way. It's not just we love them, they really love us as well, and they also know from our point of view that we actually do support them. It's not just we're watching a football match and that's it. We are what I call a proper supporter. We're not just people who talk about football. We support our manager, we support our players, and I think thankfully our players recognise that, and obviously they interact where they can really without overdoing it. And there's been lots of videos. There's been lots of occasions. I know Amber has put up some stuff, and I think Jackie's retweeted Zoe's video of her singing. There's been so much between us, and you don't see it as often in the men's game. I mean, sometimes with the men's game, they don't even run their own social media accounts, and that'll probably lead into the negative thing maybe later on in the show. And I can see why sometimes the men's team wouldn't want to read their own social media, because it's a lot more you know, you get a lot. It's a higher ratio, isn't it? Of course, but you do get a lot more negative comments on the men's game than you do the women's. But yeah, look, for me, I think it's absolutely great that even if they don't read or even if they don't reply, you know, 90% of the time they'll probably at least read what you say. So yeah, I think that's a massive benefit for us.
Yeah, Anthony, I'm going to sort of touch on this point here that Vix has got about, you know, sort of Mary likes to comment and it's great to interact. Because obviously I know you've had sort of, you know, and your lads as well, I know we've sort of discussed this before, haven't we? But you've kind of had these interactions as well. And I think it's great with, you know, young kids, for anybody that's got young, you know, like I say, young children, that they can sort of not only speak to their heroes after games, but also now we're getting sort of things back on social media. Do you want to sort of talk about then that bit, and like I say, sort of add to Vic's comments there? I know she's talked here as well, and this comment about Rashford as well, but sort of just expand on what John said, really.
Yeah, you mentioned three of the players there that are brilliant with social media. Mary Earps is brilliant getting back. You probably saw the video I took of Tyler saving a penalty, and I tweeted Mary.
Yeah,
loved it. Then you got Jess, Christmas time, like John, with a shirt with Sigsworth on the back. Is she like that? And then and Kirsty Hansen's really is a really good one. She, if you say, "Oh, I hope the injury's not too bad" or something, or she might be somewhere, like you go, "I would enjoy that" or something, and they take their time, and which is really good. Like John said, you don't get that with the men's, but then with the men's, this is it, isn't it? There's more football fans that follow the men's than the women, isn't there? So yeah, you got that. With Vic's comment with the Mary, I didn't see Vic's comment.
Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know. No, I'm on about what she commented on the video.
Oh,
I did see the video, and it did make me laugh.
Yeah.
And that's what I like about Mary. Like, some people could, it's that typical comment. Well, that's the negative. We'll wait until the negative. But she bantered it back with her food, which is great. So
it's brilliant. Yeah,
it's definitely good that they, and like you said, 9 times out of 10 they probably do see it. So when we get to negative, we'll discuss other stuff.
Yeah, of course. The dog food, the good old dog food. I don't know if you've seen it, John, or heard about it.
Yeah, I've retweeted it, and that's the thing. I mean, look, we don't want our players to come back at every insult or everything, do we? Because it turned into a slanging match. But I think because it was so comical, and I just thought fair play to her, fair play. And look at all the retweets it had, and everyone. Obviously, it started with a negative, but because of what she did, she had 10 times, if not 100 times, the amount of positives after this by everyone. Even the top journalist in America was retweeting it, and that was really good. I don't want to be seeing it all the time, if I'm honest, because even though it was good, you know, you don't want to have that slanging match, do you? But it's nice to know that she got one up there, didn't she?
Yeah, absolutely. I think as well, another thing, whilst we're sort of on the goodness of social media, is that what I like as well is obviously there's, you know, the club. I mean, it's quite, I say it's rare. They do it, just not often. They put out, don't they, things with players, sort of whether it's a video, whether it's a Q&A, whether it's something they might have done in the community for those people that sort of follow United Foundation. And it's really good to see, isn't it? You know, that there's so much that the players, obviously, like we've talked about, kind of give back. And it's not just online as well. It's like I say, you know, within the community, obviously not this year, but obviously, you know, pre everything that was going on, there's the visits to school, and it's very sort of relatable, isn't it? Because, you know, like, I mean, not just kids, but adults as well, you know, can turn up and say, oh yeah, I really love watching such a player play, and oh yeah, my son or daughter had this player coming into their school today. And I think that again is massively underrated, because it's putting the name out there, isn't it? And it all kind of links to the promotion of not only our players but the team as well.
Can I just
like I say,
Matt? Go on. Just very quickly. So yeah, there's been so many good videos in the last couple of years. You know, there's been some about racism, loneliness, be kind, all this kind of stuff. But one of the things that I do like, as a bit of a side note, is that the men's team and the women's team are getting together to do these videos as well, and that's just a credit to United really bringing the team united, I guess. But yeah, so many good videos as well.
Yeah, I think, well, I'll bring in you there, Anthony, on that sort of the videos. It's good, isn't it, now that we're finally seeing a combined effort under the whole Man United, shall we say, club or badge? Because I know some teams don't obviously bother, and some kind of, if we name drop Liverpool, treat the women's team appallingly, promise the earth and deliver very little. But, you know, it's good, isn't it? Because obviously, I don't know if you've seen some of the videos, like the Remington ones and the ones where they've talked about sort of mental health and loneliness. But yeah, it's kind of, it has, hasn't it? And they've really sort of upped that in the last few years. I don't know if you want to sort of expand there and, you know, just sort of mention those videos for the viewers in case there's people that haven't seen them.
Yeah, like you say, it's one team, one club. We're all men, women, youth. So no, it's brilliant that they involve the women, which they didn't so much do at the start. And the mental health and all that is so important when it comes from, like, if you idolise someone, I'm going to go a bit off sport like now.
Yeah, go on.
Matt Johnson loves Jade from Little Mix, and if she was to do a video about that and that, he idolises her. So it's like, if it's coming from someone you idolise, you take it in, doesn't you? It hits there a bit more.
Yeah.
But no, I think that's it pretty much.
No, I get what you're saying. Like you say, it kind of, if it's somebody you idolize, or even somebody that's just well known, I think, you know, it's important that you don't have to sort of idolize. I mean, take, for example, Marcus Rashford and sort of the food that he's been collecting and the stuff for the kids' school meals. Obviously, working in a school myself, you do see this a lot, and people say, "Oh, it's not common in England, or it's not common up here," but listen, it's common everywhere. And I think, you know, he used his profile, didn't he? And like you say, you know, most people, I'd say 90% of people that follow football, maybe even 100%, know who Rashford is. And then obviously the flip side, you've got, I mean, I've got people in my school and they would say, you know, they never have a clue about football. And they're sort of like, you know, coming up for retirement age and saying, "Oh, isn't it great about Rashford?" And like you say, it gets that conversation started, doesn't it? And it links the topic that's being talked about to highlighting an issue. And I think, again, that's another great thing we see on social media, is that it can be used to raise awareness, which I think is kind of what you were sort of alluding to there, weren't you? About, you know, whether it's somebody that's familiar, whether it's somebody that's, you know, up and coming. It's great that we could, you know, sort of have that with the men and the women. And something Vix mentions here, you know, about it can make somebody's day. And I used to remember in season 1, there was, you know, even myself, you know, you'd be absolutely buzzing when somebody, like, you know, either liked your picture or tweeted you back or just took time out of their day to reply. Go on, John.
No, I'm sorry. I just wonder, how much freedom do you think the women's team have over the social media accounts? Obviously, I don't know how to put it really, but obviously you could just turn around and say, "Look, it's your account, but if you do something stupid, you'll be reprimanded." Or would they have to sign a contract? Would they have to go through somebody first before they even put a tweet out or a reply? Do they have to ask permission for anything, you know, before they like something? Or it does make me wonder. Matt, I don't know if you got any bit more insight into that, but there's got to be some sort of, you know.
Yeah, no, sure, I'll pick up on that. So basically at Man United, they have a psychologist, they have media training, and they have a social media, I wouldn't say manager, I'd say like advisor, so to speak. Now, in terms of content, I mean, it's pretty much within reason, and that's sort of inverted commas, you know, kind of freedom to pretty much post whatever, as long as it, like, you know, it's the uphold the professional standards, things like that. You know, it's not too controversial. It's not something that brings the club sort of into disrepute. And it's kind of similar. When I worked at a football club, it was in our contract, and we had to sign and say, you know, we had to make it clear in our bio that our opinions were our own and not that of the employers. Again, it was checked. There was like monthly meetings on social media, sort of the dangers of it, the advantages of it. We were constantly checked what we're putting out. And if it was something where And again, this is the same with the women. If it's something where it could cause a bit of an issue, or it may be interpreted the wrong way, then the players have to take it down. I know there's been instances in the past, for example, let's say there's been a behind closed doors game, and there was one recently, wasn't there, against Sheffield, I think it was the last international break. And one of the players posted a video, and then subsequently, about an hour later, it was taken down. And we've seen that lots of times. I think it's just, especially when the players are young, they have to be sort of guided, so to speak. And especially players who may, let's say, owner, for example, come over, may not fully understand the language. And we've sort of seen it in the men's, haven't we, where people dig up old tweets, or they kind of, you know, there was the Cavani incident where something was acceptable in his country wasn't acceptable here, and then obviously got a ban and a fine. So I think obviously it's a fine balance, and it says, you know, this is a good point here about, you know, they've got to be savvy enough. I think, you know, I'm not going to say everyone, but I've noticed some players do have like a separate account. So they'll have like, you know, their main account where they sort of fans, and then they'll have a private one for sort of family and friends. And you're sort of seeing that a lot now. But yeah, in terms of Man United, like I say, there's training on the lot. There's sort of counsellors and people they can speak to. You know, and I'm sure obviously we'll get onto the sort of darker side of social media very shortly. But yeah, it's kind of it's like I say, it's quite relaxed. And I know you'll probably notice as well on game day. Obviously, they're all over the stories, aren't they? The girls, they're posting and promoting. But yeah, just, you know, again, it's one of them where if used in the right way, it can be very, very useful and good, not only for players and individual, but the club as a whole.
I wonder if that'll change.
Go on, John.
So I wonder if that'll change a little bit for the worse, I guess, when they do get more popular, and also if they start getting like agents, how much control they'll start getting. Then it's not an answer that we need to ask. You know, it's not a question that we need to ask right now. But obviously, the men's players are different to the women's because of the popularity and all that kind of stuff. When the women's players start getting more popular, are they going to have to be a bit more limited? It's just something to think about, isn't it? And that's one of the downfalls, I guess, of when the women's game does get a bit more popular. Then you know, will these kind of things gradually start slipping away?
Yeah, I read something. I'm sure it was Joe Hart after Tottenham went out the Europa League, and he was sort of saying it was a shame that, you know, footballers now lead sort of their agents or the management or somebody at the club to sort of, you know, do their social media, because I think it ended up with him. He accidentally posted they'd won and they'd lost, and he put something like great result. And it was just interesting because he come out. Do you remember that? He came out after it and he sort of apologised. He said, I don't run my my own Twitter.
No way.
And at the time, he got a load of stick. And then afterwards, he made it worse by saying, I think, you know, we should be running our own. And it's like, well, you're the one paying somebody else to run yours. But I know there's been a lot recently, sort of in not only the men's game and not only football, you know, but sort of players where, you know, I mean, listen, fair enough. You know, they may not be able to keep up with everything. They may not have the time. I don't know. But to me, maybe that personally could possibly defeat the sort of object of being on it. Because I know, speaking from me, and obviously I'm not here with, you know, thousands and millions of followers, but, you know, it's that like we talked about at the start, that interaction and that kind of, you know, see what's going on rather than just being on it for being on its sake, where, you know, you've got somebody else running it and it's like you've no clue what's being sort of said. Gary Neville blasted. Yeah, again, there you go, something else. I'm going to sort of move on then. And we're going to go to the flip side. I'm going to let you sort of open this up first, Anthony, because I know we had a conversation, didn't we? You sort of mentioned to me, you know, that there was players that you'd seen in the women's game that had sort of been pushed off social media or forced off. And I know you mentioned to me, didn't you, about sort of Thierry Henry and the racism and sort of sexism and abuse. So do you want to sort of open up with something, and then me and John will kind of, you know, follow on?
Yeah, obviously the negative with people are very small-minded. You get these people that think it's only words, and they obviously think you're joking, or they'll think they'll take it as a joke. Like we said, there's players that have come off social media. Thierry Henry's come off it because. And he's got a point. How do you see it? How can you have a copyright law? Like if you were to play S Club 7 with the music and that. It's just the first thing that comes to my head. And you put it on Twitter.
On this show, and S Club 7, okay.
Yeah, and you put it on Twitter.
Don't come for me, people, as well. The people that are watching better not come for me for that now.
Twitter.
Carry on.
Twitter, they go, well, this is against the copyright law.
Yeah, absolutely.
We made a mistake. But there's loads of people, Fred, Martial, Tasabi. If you put that monkey emoji, there's loads of them doing it, and it needs to be controlled. Like there needs to be a format where you get bans, or if it's that serious, then I know the police don't have a lot of time, but if it's that serious, it needs to be followed up with a warning and risk. And if you carry on doing it, then there has to be some way of just banning them from social media. Because if you can't behave, then like an adult, then why should you be able to have that opinion on social media?
Yeah, absolutely. No, yeah, I get what you're trying to say. I think before you were sort of on about like copyright, weren't you? Like, for example, if I was to live stream a men's match that's on Sky via my phone and put it on Twitter, like you say, it'd be taken down instantly. Again, music. And I think it's a shame that they're so hot on things that, okay, they're serious, but they're not as serious as racism. Like, live streaming a game, it's not, do you know what I mean? It's not the end of the world, is it? And maybe, using some music accidentally, some people aren't aware. But with racism, there's kind of no, and even the abuse, there's no excuse. And like you say, that there's got to be a way, because it's so easy to send sort of a tweet or a DM and then be banned and then remake an account under a different name.
Right.
John, I'm going to put up some comments as well to let you add your thoughts to this.
Can I just add one more thing, John?
Go on, Anthony.
Yeah, perfect. And then John will jump in.
Sorry. The taking the knee for racism, how do you think it's making an impact? Because it's quite clearly it's been happening for years. Do you remember 15 years ago when you could get them black and white bands that you wore?
The kick it out bands.
Yeah.
And it's obviously they're trying to oppose a message, but so how do you see it? Do you see any improvement from years ago, or do you think it's working? I know people like Wilfred Sahar and that have decided they're not taking the knee because they feel like it's just something they're doing for the sake of it.
I
think on, John, I'll let you.
Yeah, look, it's a very sensitive subject, isn't it? I think it's what it has done is it's shown solidarity, and it showed and obviously it's raised awareness, even though we know it's there anyway. But sometimes I just think the more you raise awareness to it, the more people will feed on that in a bad way. So all the racists will jump on it. So, for example, if when Twanzebe got racially abused, everyone jumped on it. The racists loved that because they created that fuss, which is what they wanted.
Give them promotion, didn't it, for themselves?
Yeah. And then the following week, they did it again to either, I think it was Martial back then. So is it? I don't know if it's actually helping or not, but because obviously there are racists there, isn't there? But I think what it has showed is everyone, the whole world's united against racism, and I think that's pretty much what it means to me, I guess. But Matt, if you want to say something on that one before I have my say on the other thing.
Sure. I think I'm just going to go back to answer this point about since I think it was Rio Ferdinand's initiative, wasn't it? The Stand Up, Speak Up bands. I've still got mine somewhere. Actually, and my yellow Live Strong one.
Yeah. Do
you remember that?
Yeah, I remember them as well.
I think, do I think it's improved? Sadly, not. No, I think it's got worse. And Vix makes
because of social media.
Because of social media, I really do. But I think it has to start from being young, and it is, and talking about, again, sort of education and things like that. Education's one thing, and, you can educate, but at the end of the day, we're still seeing, people send stuff. And, there's a comment, let me just try and find it. It was talking about tagging players. Here, people, you're still seeing that. Now, we've all said, haven't we, sort of, constructive criticism, which, interpret it different ways and how you want. But to me, constructive criticism isn't abuse. It's not me going out there and saying, oh, this player's this and this player's that and so on. That it'd be me saying, oh, such a body wasn't at the best today. They had a poor game. And I think there's a fine balance between sort of that and abuse, where people do need educating, and it does start at a young age. But I think, sometimes it can be difficult. In terms of taking the knee, I think, the message, like you said at the start, John, was sort of the solidarity and coming together. I think here John Neville talks about, it's almost been forgotten. I know there has been certain players, hasn't there, that have sort of opposed it now and said, it's become meaningless and diluted. I mean, personally, it's one of them. I don't know. I mean, it's hard for me to speak on this because obviously I'm fortunate, and I'm sure you both are as well, not to go through racism. And I think we need to educate. We need to support people that do suffer sort of, from racism and abuse and things like that. And I think collectively everybody's responsible. Like you said, John, social media for me has absolutely killed it. It really has, because it's just made it a lot worse. And I think it has gone backwards. And, it is sad that we're sitting here sort of saying that, but it's one of them where, I'm sort of looking here, sort of, companies doing something about it. Could they maybe track and block the IP address? Possibly. I think there was sort of things here. Yehuda, we can get that. Yep, talked about governments imposing fines, and I think for me, everybody's got to come together. Governing bodies of sports, i.e., the FA, the LTA, if it's tennis, rugby, etc., need to come together with the government and everybody, and collectively speak and sort of decide the way forward to go. Not just for racism, but for abuse. And sort of the mental health and sort of psychology side. But I'll pass over to you, John, because I know you've got obviously your points to get through. But those are my sort of personal views on it.
I think just on that point, I have said this before. Sorry, can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have mentioned this point before, but I can't see why social media from now on, whenever you create an account, you just have to give ID over, like, state exactly who you are. So you've got to be over 16 or 18 anyway to have an account, something like that. So if you give ID over, like as if you were joining like a Ladbrokes account, then they would know exactly who holds that account. That's for like any account from now on that's freshly made. But all the accounts that's currently got an account who you don't know who they are, no problem. As soon as they get reported, you get chucked off. So when they create a new account, then obviously they'll be identified. Now, obviously, it can't be that easy because I don't know why it's not, because surely, that it is that simple. Obviously, you are then limiting the amount of users. So I'm sure that's probably why Twitter and everybody else are probably opposing it. But to me, that is one way of tracking who they are. And also, there's a comment about tagging players. Absolutely hate it, whether it be racism or that you've had a bad game. Why would a decent human being tag someone to say you've been crap today? Why on earth would you do that? And with the men's team, obviously, they don't read it themselves. They might read it, they might not. But generally, because of how many followers they've got, they probably won't read it. The women's team, they do read it because there's less followers, so it's bound to flash up on the phone. All I would recommend is, if I was a player, just block right away. You see something, block it. No, we'll just block, whatever. And then, because I wouldn't want them to go private, because there are 90% positive comments. There really is probably 95% positive comments. But as the game grows, you will get these, they call themselves fans, but they're not fans, who want to put our players down. And that's just something, unfortunately, that we're going to have to get used to as fans, because we don't like reading that. Our players don't like reading that. We probably get more annoyed than the player, to be honest, because I get so frustrated when I see that, and we all talk. We talk ourselves, don't we? Look at that. We name him in a separate conversation. Look at that idiot. I won't mention any names, but constantly going on when there's just no need to. And then it comes on to bullying, victimisation, targeting. When you start going for the same person every time, they might have had a fantastic game, but if they make one mistake, you're jumping on them. And then that becomes harassment. Now, if it becomes harassment, that's a criminal offence, surely. So it really does open up a can of worms. And I think there's something that the fans can do, because if more than like one person reports a tweet, obviously it'll get looked into, and there's enough positive United fans out there. If we all got together and just reported every tweet going where you're being abusive, not criticising, I'm on about abusive, then we could actually make a stand on this. And I'm sure that down the line, I'm happy to really push that forward. But just get together a group of us. If 10, 20 of us just report every racist account or every, not so much racist, because I'm talking more now about bullying or harassment. There's something that we can do there to close these accounts down.
Like John said, the people saying, "Oh, you had a rubbish game. Oh, what the hell are you doing?" I'm sure, as players themselves, that they are their biggest critics. So if they think they've had a bad game, or they know they've had a bad game, the last thing they're probably down anyway. No one wants to lose, so they're probably already down as it is, and you don't need that. You've lost, or you've had a bad game, but you don't need some troll going, "Oh, what the hell was that?" This is another thing. If it's women's football, what the hell was that? What are you doing? The WFC example. Why don't you get back to your kitchen? And that sort of stuff. And also going back to what John Neville was saying about the knee losing its thing. It's a bit like the NHS clap. Everyone was clapping. Yeah. And then the government then go and insult them and say, well, we can only give you 1% pay rise. Now, they save people's lives. I won't go into what I've got, but I got a nice pay rise, and I'm a landscape gardener. I'm just making gardens look nice. I'm not saving people's lives or making people recover. But when you look at what I got compared to the NHS, and we had all this clapping and that, it's like, it's a big insult, and it's like 2 fingers up. Thanks for the great work and all that, but we can only afford to give you 1%.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you made a good point when you said you know, or they know, the players know when they've had a bad game, and I think that's kind of what it boils down to me. And listen, I'm fortunate enough to personally know a few players in the women's game, and absolutely, I can 100% vouch for that they know when they've had a bad game. Literally, they probably, a lot of them take it out on themselves and sort of beat themselves up about it. Some do, some don't. It depends sort of how you are mentally. But believe me, they know when they've had a poor game. And I think sometimes for me, it does go too far. I mean, there's a great point. People complaining about a player signing a new contract. I mean, for God's sake, that
just goes back to what I said. Sorry, it just goes back to what I said. What decent person would do that? We've all got to have our own opinions, but tag someone and say, I just don't get it.
Yeah,
I just don't get it.
I think the thing is for me though is that if you're taking time out your day to go and say some absolute crap like that, firstly what you're doing with your day, secondly what you're doing on social media, and thirdly what you're doing supporting the club. I'm pretty sure you don't want to, I don't want to be sat next to people saying, "Oh, why is such a player signing a new contract?" Or why has this player got 5 years and this player's only got 2? Everybody's got the favourites, and that's great, but I think they need to cut people a bit of slack. Go on, John.
Yeah, sorry, I'll get wound up now.
No,
but this is again this whole keyboard warrior thing. I love the fact that 99% of these people on Twitter wouldn't say anything inside the stadium, whether it be the men's team against Ollie or inside the stadium with us. It just ain't going to happen, is it? So sometimes it gets me angry, but on the flip side, I kind of laugh about it because they are cowards, and that's what bullies are. They hide behind players' pictures. And I will happily have a debate with fans if they actually put up a proper conversation and actually show their face and have the proper name. And because I could always back up my opinions, and if they've got a different opinion, that's absolutely fine. I love that. I love that part of it. But when they're actually targeted and just, I'll just block them myself now. I don't even get into it.
Yeah. Anthony, I've got a question for you, and then I'll let John answer it as well, because I know you talked about before, and I know we've had comments on it as well from the viewers about sort of reporting tweets and stamping it out. I know there's a lot of it now, and it's magnified in the women's game more so, I think, because, like you said, John, earlier, players are reading it and it's out there because it's a smaller community, whereas the men's, there's like an absolute shed load of it. Anthony, so my question is it fans' responsibility to stamp it out? I mean, I know John talked about blocking it, but would you say it's a responsibility of fans, or fans and players, or how do you sort of view that in terms of, looking to stamp it out or call it out maybe?
Well, we've all got to play our part. I personally think if you're sat next to someone, and this is the thing, if you're sat next to someone and say, for example, Fred has done something like, and you go, what the hell is that? And you have someone next to you going, oh, what's the hell was that? You do.
Yeah.
A lot of people would just pretend they didn't hear it. That's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like an ignorance.
You obviously you get that one person who could be there, and they report it to the steward, and but what can they do without evidence? Like, is there? I know when it happens with a player, and they can say that they get them video people in, don't they?
Like lip readers, and
Well, it's a bit difficult, a bit more difficult in a stadium, especially if it's in a 90,000 seater stadium. It's like, how do you prove on that sort of thing? Regarding the social media side of it, well, this is the problem, isn't it? Fake names. It's the problem in it. Anyone can do a fake name. And I know Ricky mentioned about IP address, but that doesn't stop someone going on their laptop and then using another form of technology.
Yeah, to sort of hide it or change it.
Yeah, with another account or something.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So
John,
go
on.
No, we've all got to play our part, but like I said, it's hard when lots of people would just turn their ear.
Blind eye. Yeah. John, do you want to sort of add to that then? What I was saying about, is it fans' responsibility? Because I know Anthony talked about in the ground, which, like you say, if let's say I was sat on a row and somebody behind me was racist or sexist, whichever, obviously you would report it. But obviously in terms of on social media, it becomes difficult, doesn't it?
It does, but social media is obviously full of users. So it is our responsibility. It's completely up to the individual how they do it. However, 90% of the, I keep on saying 90%. I don't know where I'm getting these figures from. I'm making them up. But a lot of the abusive comments that I see are from accounts that's got less than 100 followers. So they're very, they are small
on
accounts.
On the whole, yeah, sure.
Yeah. Obviously, you got your main accounts who are just doing it just for retweets.
Yeah, and likes.
So So these accounts are only going to get bigger if we all start speaking on it, like commenting on it, retweeting it, or liking it. So obviously we wouldn't like it, but if we start commenting on their tweets saying, "How dare you say that?" then obviously everyone all my followers can then see that, and then it all highlights it. And I think that makes it worse, because then all of a sudden more people will start talking about it, and then you'll have other racist or other bullies jumping on, and then they've got the reaction that they wanted. So for me, I'd either just completely ignore it, because then they don't get it's like bait, isn't it? They're just trying to bait you. So I'd either completely ignore it or just report it. I wouldn't go typing on it, because then all you're going to do is just open it up. So for me, I would just back away from it. Yes, sometimes I have kind of fell for it, and if they've got in on a player, I'd try and win an argument over it. But then what's the point? Because they're not a fan. They're not a fan. They're not. They're a nobody. So for me, I'll probably ignore it and then report it as well. That's probably the best way for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you mentioned it before, sort of, players getting tagged in it and sort of you seeing it, and I think. I'm sort of not scared to say this. It's something that kind of it gets to me and it winds me up. And you think, if I'm getting wound up by it, what on earth is a player? You know, I mean, like I say, it's difficult, especially when the people that you know are getting criticised, and I find that difficult from my point of view. Like you say, not to sort of get into a full-blown argument, and I've really tried to wind that in over the years, but it's hard. It really is. And when you see, you know, stuff getting personal, and, you know, over the last few weeks, you know, we've seen even more recently, so the last few days, I've seen things and I've read things, and, you know, I did actually call one out the other day, and it wasn't anything bad that I'd said. I just said, you know, I think somebody was moaning about a certain player, and I said, oh, next thing we'll be moaning about sort of the colour of the shorts and the colour of the socks. It was that petty. And, you know, you talked about blocking them, but I think sometimes, you know, people need to think, and I know players that have taken breaks from social media, and I know, like I say, again, linking back to people I personally speak to within the game, and not just players, but coaches as well, you know, they're getting so much, and they're thinking, you know, all they've done is gone out on a pitch for 90 minutes and played a game of football. That's all it boils down to. It's the job, you know, whether it's a win, whether it's a loss, whether it's a draw, you know, at the end of the day, it's football, isn't it? And you think somebody's being abused, and, you know, I think what people don't realise or don't sort of take into account is, obviously, once they've sent it, they don't know what people are going through personally, you know, players. You know, I know there's been circumstances where, you know, players have been going through something in the private life and then had a bit of a mare because of what's going on the pitch, but they're still playing on to kind of take the mind off it, and then got a shed load of abuse when they get home because, you know, it's, like you say, it is something, you know, that they do see. And I think this is the thing, you know, we talked about earlier, tagging players, and there's so many, you know, players that sort of, you know, they like to interact with us, and they do keep an eye. People think, oh, well, you know, they don't follow me, so they won't see it. But even by tagging them, you know, they do see it. And I think it's one of them where now we've got to be massively careful in terms of, you know, like I say, stamping it out and sort of calling it out as well as reporting it.
I just hope as well that the players, and I think they are, I think it's a big step for some of the players who have got well known worldwide now. So, for example, like, you know, Man United was obviously a brand new team only 3 years ago, and a lot of those players have made a massive jump in their careers recently, and they're probably not used to receiving some of those messages, or not receiving them, but like reading those messages. So I think it's a big well done to a lot of those players we talk about how they progressed on the pitch, but you got to think about how they're progressing off the pitch, because they are role models, they are superstars now. You know, playing in Man United at the WSL, you know, it is a massive step. So I think sometimes we just have to think, you know, well done to obviously react in the ways that they do. But yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, sure.
It's not just racism, though, is it? As well with football, and that it's body shaming, isn't it? Another example. Sorry, I'm going back to Little Mix.
No, go on.
Jessie, they always used to troll her about her body weight, and there's only a certain amount you can take before it gets to you, and it clearly got to her. So, and
no, you spot on, and I think again something, you know, another good point here by Vic's about, you know, people forget how young our players are, let them have some fun. And I link it back to last season, one of our development players, and I'm not going to name them, supports Man City, follows the Man City men's team, but obviously follows Man United women, and got an absolute ton of abuse for, you know, basically being a City men's fan. And I think, you know, this player, I think, was 16 last year, you know, and they got an absolute load of abuse from so-called United fans. I mean, I don't know what kind of whose fans they were really, but this was a player that was, you know, 16, and you're thinking, you know, how sad is it to see that, you know, somebody of that age that's in the development team, you know, that, like Vic said there, you know, just young, wants to have fun. It's probably on social media for various different reasons, you know, and it's sad, isn't it? You know, it's dangerous as well, because, like you say, you know, those young players, and we again, we talk about mental health and we link it in. And, you know, like I said before, these players do have people they can speak to, and psychologists, which is great if you're at Man United, but not every club has that. And I think that for me is a massive issue going forward, is that not everybody's a Man United, not everybody has the money, the finance, the resource to employ these people like professionals to help them out. Anthony, that sort of anything you want to add before I wrap it up in terms of like, going forward in social media, maybe something you'd like to see, whether that's, improvement wise, whether there's something you think we could do as fans or anything along those lines?
I think we pretty much touched on it really. There's only so much policing you can do. We've already discussed, like John said, the ID and that. Unfortunately, I don't think something like that will ever happen. And unfortunately, this is society. People like to troll. It's horrible to say, but unfortunately, racism, body shaming, all that. Unfortunately, it's always going to be there, I feel. It's about making sure, well, obviously we want to stamp it out fully, but unfortunately there's too many small-minded people in this world that get a buzz off it, and it's just about trying to stamp it out as much as we can. Like I said, if you hear something, go and report it to your nearest steward. If you see something on Twitter, report it. Like John said, if 20 people report it, they're going to investigate it, aren't they?
Yeah. Well, you'd hope so, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So no, pretty much what we discussed. I think that's it for me.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do is, John, I'm going to hand you over to you because I know obviously there was some news, sad news that broke earlier today, and John Neville has just posted that. So do you want to sort of, deliver that or sort of, offer your condolences?
Yeah. John's obviously just kind of bet me to it. So just like a little bit about myself. I mean, like what this kind of means to me. People won't realise this and they might not even believe it, but I don't even have my TV on. The only time my TV ever goes on is if I watch Man United on BT Sport. I don't watch Netflix. I don't watch films. I don't watch DVDs. I'm really not up to date with anything. I watch YouTube. That's all I watch. I watch YouTube and I watch Man United football, fans talk about football. That's all I watch. I've got no kids. I live by myself, and that's pretty much my life. I watch fan channels, not just Man United. It's a good way for me to learn about other clubs. So obviously, I listen to Arsenal. There's Tottenham fans as well. So fan channels are a big part of my life. And Matt, you're the one that actually told me the news today, and I couldn't believe it, to be honest. Really surprised me, really upsetting. I messaged Natalie when I found out because you didn't reply back to me right away, Matt. And I messaged Nat, and Nat said, "Yeah, it's true." And man, it's just such a shame because he's just like I didn't know him personally, but when you start watching people on YouTube and you just think to yourself, "Oh, I could have a pint with him and talk about talk about football," could quite easily be next to you because he's just like such an easygoing guy, and just a massive loss to Claude. So thoughts with his friends and family.
Yeah, and obviously, myself and obviously Anthony echo sort of those statements. Very, very sad. For those of you that don't know Claude, he was a regular on Arsenal Fan TV with Robbie. Sadly passed away today. And yeah, it's one of them, isn't it? We talked tonight a lot about social media and sort of, support out there. And, it's one of them. Obviously, we don't know the circumstances, but, things get said. And at the end of the day, people are only human. And yeah, it's kind of sad, really, sort of like you say, hearing about that. I think I heard about it this afternoon. I say, just condolences to all his family and all his friends. Going to wrap it there. We've come close to an hour. Just before we do go, I'll update you on our weekly schedule. This will go out as well on All for United. It'll be tweeted. But Thursday, 7:30. John, you're on, aren't you? Adam Millington, the journalist, is on. Yeah. So there'll be a great discussion there. Again, somebody that we've not had on before, new to the show, and that'll be very exciting on our YouTube channel. Saturday, myself and Ben are back at 8 p.m. And then Sunday, we'll have the Brighton match preview and also halftime show. And this week, I'm passing the reins over to you, John. So no pressure on that. I'm tied up off reporting as I do. So yeah, so I'm leaving that in your expert hands. So yeah, thanks everybody for tuning in. And thank you, to yourselves as well for tuning in, to Anthony and for John. Quick social shout out, Anthony. I'm hoping you've still remembered where we can find you. Yeah,
it's ATC Wilson.
Brilliant. ATC Wilson on Twitter. Give Anthony a follow. Again, get involved. Questions, anything you want to sort of discuss. Yourself, John.
Yeah, John Foster, MUFC on Twitter, JON Foster, MUFC. And that's it, really. Yeah.
Brilliant. And you can find me at MattCrane15. In fact, I've even found the button to show them. About that. But thank you to everyone once again, for tuning in. It's always, we always talk about on this channel about how great it is to see so many people interact, whether you're a Man United fan, whether you're a fan of another club, or whether you just like women's football in general. So thank you from us three. Like I say, check John out on YouTube, 7:30 on Thursday. We'll get all the links out for that as per. And yeah, thank you everybody and good night. Cheers, guys.
Take care.